you can get into Nashville, but it's saturated and it's not very good if you do the same shit that everybody else does. Let's talk about the Nashville market. Today, I've got Kirklyn Powell, who is my agent here in Nashville, Tennessee. What's the landscape in the Nashville STR investment opportunities right now?
Great question. The landscape can be challenging depending on the specific type of investor. So with our market, specifically in Davidson County, where Nashville is located, we've got very strict regulations. They can be challenging, but they also are very straightforward. So at least there's no gray area, which is something I do appreciate about them.
We're dealing with gray area right now.
We're dealing with gray area because we're outside of Davidson County, right? Yeah. So that's been the biggest struggle with short-term rentals. So back in, I want to say 2021, they rezoned, added more regulations. We operated about 24% of the people visiting use Airbnb, VRBO, short-term rentals of sorts. And a lot of people think the Nashville market's saturated, which I don't disagree with that. I think that we are saturated to an extent, but I also think we're just a very competitive market because our purchase price is continuing to increase and our annual revenue is not increasing at that same rate.
Because of the saturation.
Exactly, yes.
It's also closed saturation. Mm-hmm. So usually like Kenny Bedwell and I will say markets aren't saturated, it's bedroom counts.
And we're maxed at 4 bedrooms.
That's the problem. That's the real crux of the problem, right?
We have a maximum of, at least Davidson County, where Nashville is located, is 4 bedrooms. So if it's 5 bedrooms or plus, you cannot get a non-owner occupied NOO STR permit. It's got to be zoned specifically too. And they're always changing something. I was just chatting with an agent. It was a few months ago and she was like, oh yeah, the CL zoning just switched. And like, there's always something changing. So even with that, I never go off of what I know. I always reach out to codes because I've got a good relationship with their STR sector to verify everything via address because I don't want to sell a short-term rental that's not eligible just because I think that it is. I need to verify that with them.
We're doing that for me right now. Yeah. I speak to somebody at the county this morning. You speak to them a couple of times. We're getting a little bit of conflicting information. Yep. We need to get it in writing. And I can't find it on their website, right? I don't think you've been able to find it on their website.
No, it's nowhere. And that's the thing too, is short-term rentals, they do exist. They don't exist of what you and I know as of short-term rentals. People have just your standard 2-bedroom home, furnished but no amenities, nothing extravagant. So they don't have any issues with short-term rentals. But you get into what you're
wanting to fly under the radar that way.
Yes, but then when you stand out and they're like, there's a house at the pool, pickleball court, volleyball, beach volleyball, et cetera, it's like, that's a little different. Yeah. And they don't understand what that means. To us, that's a short-term rental. To them, they're like, that is an event space. And that's the challenging and conflict that we're reaching. And it depends on the county. And then where at the county can also determine the regulations and restrictions. And they all have something different. So it's not like all of Middle Tennessee is the same thing. Every county is different. Every city inside the counties, depending on the cities, have different regulations. Some allow them, some don't. It just kind of depends, and that's the big challenge.
So a lot of people think that Nashville is shut down. Like you can't buy short-term rentals here. There are pathways to be able to invest into Nashville.
Absolutely.
Can you kind of break those down for everybody?
Totally. I think the first thing is just total BS of people saying that you can't invest or Airbnbs are not allowed in Nashville, Tennessee. That's a complete myth. You can. I have multiple under contract right now. I have my own that I got last year. Like there's just so many conflicting information like spread out. Just straight on myths with that. So they are eligible, and we are actually a super saturated market for listings. So we're very buyer heavy or buyer centric in terms of
how many short-term rentals are listed for sale on the market right now.
I don't have that stat because we don't have a section to go through it. They're all in the residential
I'm
mix.
gonna guess like 1,000 to 1,500.
Yes. So with that, like a healthy market supply is about 6 months. We're over 12 months. Right. So that just goes to show. And then on the average, because I do like a full run through of every property that goes under contract in Davidson County every week. So every Monday I go through for my sellers to report to them like. And it's typically between less than or up to like 1.2% of the properties are STR eligible. So with that, very, very minimal buyers and heavy sellers.
And I'm going to guess most of those, a lot of them are the 3 and 4 bedrooms on Fern and, East Nashville, and everybody's doing the exact same thing.
Exactly.
It's a copycat market.
Yeah.
What a lot of you are going to hear Kirklyn just say is, yeah, you can get into Nashville, but it's saturated and it's not very good. If you do the same shit that everybody else does.
That's the big key.
If you go in and do the Johnny Cash and the Taylor Swift and the Bachelorette party stuff that everybody else has done from a theming standpoint inside your 4-bedroom, there's hundreds of those that are out there. There wasn't, pre-2020.
Exactly, yes.
If you go do something completely different to a completely different buyer persona based on your location and everything else, then you can stand out. But it's hard because most of these properties don't, when you're talking like the townhomes of 4 bedrooms, don't have land.
Exactly. They're all HPRs, they're all townhomes, they're condos that's based off the zoning. So when people are like, we want a short-term rental that's a single-family home that sits on 5 acres in Davidson County,
that doesn't
go kick rocks. Yeah, like unfortunately, I can't service you because I'm not selling you that. I talked to a guy actually at our meetup last night. He doesn't fully have intentions to have it as a short-term rental. He's like, I have this house, I just bought it. It's like 5, I don't know if he said 5 or 10 acres. And he's like, can I use it as a short-term rental? That's what we'd like to do. Without even looking at the address, I said no. I was like, send me the address, I'll confirm with you and do all the back end stuff for you. But that's the thing that we're running into as well, as a lot of agents think they know short-term rentals. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I'm not. But I do feel like I've spent a lot of time and resources to learn the market and what that requires to have a good short-term rental.
Right.
And a lot of agents don't know that. So I've been grateful to have that experience, but I also get to help other agents and then also other clients when they are falling victim to that of these agents saying, well, you can make X, Y, or Z. And they gave them the pro forma from the property management company that has all the properties, and they're only making money off those flips and the management fees. They're like, Kirklyn, this isn't working. Like, what can we do to sell it? And then they're either losing money, or they're underneath, or they just are breaking even at sale. And no one else also wants to buy that because it doesn't make money. And that's the big issue that I'm now running into.
So if your dad said, Kirklyn, I got $200,000. I want a short-term rental in Nashville. Mom and I are going to use it, you know, the 14 days that we can legally use a year to come and visit you, so you don't have to go to Bentonville all the time. And
yeah.
Where are you putting your dad?
So actually, I just have a client under contract now. Great property. It's over off of Charlotte Avenue. It's a 4-bedroom. We got him under contract at $850. Got the appraisal back at $850. Comes fully furnished. Also, I don't believe in turnkey. We just they're sold furnished. That's just the way Nashville goes. They're having Summerlin come in and do a full redesign, and we're expecting them to do over $150,000, which is surpassing that 15% mark of where they need to be. Whereas it kind of goes to explain the market too. The one same townhome like attachment at the very end listed at $1 million. I'm like, this just appraised at $850. You're not getting $1 million. You're just taking up space on the market, and this could be a really good investment for my clients. But there's no way I can get them down to that $850 mark.
Right.
But something like that is what I put them into. I know a lot of people would argue the 4 bedrooms are saturated, but that also, I would agree to disagree. I think the 4 bedrooms hold the most people. And when people come to Nashville, they're not coming alone. So those 1 bedrooms are not good. The 2 bedrooms, depending, could be a feasible option. And I would go to 4 rather than 3 bedrooms.
There's a reason that the Pedal Taverns seat 10 bachelorettes on there, right?
And the one I have under contract now sleeps 24 people.
A 4-bedroom sleeps 24 people?
Yes.
How do you get away with that?
They shouldn't be getting away with it. They're advertising as 24, but on the Airbnb, they're actually putting just 12. And they're just in the listing saying, like, we could sleep up to 24 if you choose. There was bedrooms, or not beds, there were mattresses in the garage. So I told my clients, do not do that, please.
That's it. I mean, they'll pull your permit for that.
Exactly, yeah. They're very strict too. So
because you're 2 people per bedroom plus 4, correct?
So it goes 6, 8, 10, and 12 from a 1 to 4 bedroom.
Okay,
and that's the max that they allow in Davidson County. And then it goes back to design too, right? A lot of people think that we need the bachelorette parties and like the fun foo-foo stuff, which I don't disagree. The feminine side does rent out better in Nashville from my experience. But from when I was redesigning mine, I didn't want the drunk bachelorette girls. I wanted the higher end luxury market that was still feminine. So we went soft, luxury, elegant, but still extremely feminine. So people can book of all walks of life. I don't know exactly what was happening, but some sort of rager per se. My cleaning company was warning me. I had a great family from Atlanta come in, and she's a realtor. She came in with her family. They were coming in for Easter, and my clients who own next door were like, we had a horrible guest this weekend. Did you see what happened? And I'm like, no, but theirs is more of that rock and roll bachelorette. Mine is more, it just looks elevated.
Like the whole luxury music vibe type
exactly.
of deal. Gotcha.
So that really depends too. So when I'm looking at a property for a buyer, I'm also walking through it as like, what can we keep bones-wise of the cosmetic interior design? What can we get rid of? How can we upgrade it to sleep the most amount of people, but also maximize that design? You have a 4-bedroom. You need to convert your garage. You need to hopefully have a rooftop with city views of some sort. And then a lot of them have 2 living rooms as well if you get lucky.
So you and I probably over the last, 3-4 months have looked at probably 15 to 20 properties outside of Davidson County and outlying counties, probably most north of town, a couple south and southeast a little bit. They're very few and far between. And the interesting thing is I just did a consult for one of my Inner Circle members. I used to co-host a property for him in Lebanon that has a 5-bedroom, 5-bath, all master suites, 4 king beds, and 2 twin bunks to redo his exterior on 7.5 acres off of highways at 190 or 109 out there in Lebanon. And he does great. He paid under $900,000 for it. It needs a facelift. He's doing about $185,000 still to this day.
Wow.
But we went out there with Bria, my wife, and like adding a pickleball court and pathways and string lights and disc golf and barrel saunas and hot tubs and all that type of stuff. He doesn't have any of that stuff. I believe that there's still a big opportunity for that stuff because you can't get that inside the city limits. Now, there's a few Belmead mansions and stuff, I guess, that are grandfathered in, and you probably see those for Airbnb.
There's a couple of ones that'll never exist once they're gone too. Like once you sell a property in Davidson County, if there's no LLC transfer and kind of do the back end MIPA way.
Explain the MIPA ways. You're talking about refinancing into the LLC, correct?
Yes and no. So with the MIPA, it stands for a Membership Interest Purchase Agreement. Collins Legal here in Nashville, they're my go-to real estate attorneys. They created that. They're in cahoots with Metro Metro as well. So Metro's in full awareness of what a
Of what's
MIPA
happening
is.
to
Exactly.
sustain the permit without having to buy, sell, and reapply.
Correct. So there are stipulations with that, but most of the time, if it's an LLC transfer, it's a harder sale because a lot of people don't understand, and the agents can't educate their clients of what that means. And there's a MIPA and then a MIPA ready. So there's two different ways to go about that. But you're selling the LLC, so you're selling an asset. The LLC transfers the asset and then the permit. So there's no break in title, because if there's a break in title, there's a dissolving of the permit.
Right.
And then if it's not eligible anymore, you can't obtain a new short-term rental
So
permit.
it used to be back end that stuff was happening. Now it's in the front, and Metro's cool with that.
Yep. And Seth Klein is one of the managing partners there. He goes to war for the STR hosts and owners of Nashville.
Nice.
To fight for keeping, the transfers of that and just representing them well.
Gotcha. So do you think, like what we're embarking on right now, that there's a market for people to invest into larger properties
100%.
outside of Davidson County?
Yes, 100%. I sold one back in January up in Jolton. So it's Cheatham County. No regulations. They don't care. They're just like, pay your taxes and we're cool with you. She had 5 bedrooms. Technically, it was 7 sleeping bedrooms, 5 true bedrooms with the septic. She had 10 acres. It had a pool, movie theater. I'm trying to think what else she had. Massive kitchen, just great for hosting families in large groups.
When he says movie theater and pool and everything, not like new modern Magnati.
No.
It was a little bit Golden Girls compared to what would be done
Yeah,
today.
it was a little bit dated. It wasn't anything special, but it was
Still a super high performer.
super high performing though. That's the thing too, is there was no listing optimization. There was no like revenue management whatsoever. They were one set rate, which I think is incredible that she pulled that off. She did it all herself with her brother and her brother's wife. And they did all that from cleaning, guest communication, X, Y, and Z, you name it. They did it, and they did so well with that. But that's one of the only comps that I have. So I'm wanting to figure out how can we go about building out a comp set that makes sense so I can then be trustworthy enough to sell that to my client, but also be confident enough in the numbers to know that it's going to work. Because I do think it's going to work. It just needs a specific someone who sees that vision and then wants to come in and take a risk on that, because it does work. It just is a far and few between, and it requires a lot of patience.
Right. It's kind of interesting. What is new becomes old. What's old becomes new again.
Totally.
Things trend. And I just recently purchased a 2-bedroom condo in Panama City Beach, which never had on my radar. And now I'm looking at purchasing in Nashville, but not in Nashville, around
Nashville, outside of Davidson. Yep.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, there's very few Airbnbs. There's very few comps that have like all the amenities, the Smokies type of stuff. And I think that's viable here in this market currently.
I agree. I think that's the big thing that's missing. Even like in Davidson County, people want quote unquote turnkey because they're told, if you buy this, it's going to make X amount. And they just are so blind because a lot of them are new investors. They like Nashville. They either work here part-time, own companies, whatever that is. They're going to use it as even second family homes for their kids going to college. So they think, let's buy the interior package. I have one condo specifically that we're trying to sell. Every unit that's listed is currently the same design package, one of 3. So like I have a strategy session with the seller after this to be like, this is going to be a great sale. You've got a great unit, but you need to upgrade the design before we sell and invest into that, because you don't look different than any of the other 8 on the market right now. So that's a big thing too when coming in, is doing design differently and spending the money and being aware of that. That's a big thing that we're seeing in the market. But outside of that, we don't have those big amenities like you have up in any of your large super properties or anyone else that has a large super property that focuses on those amenities, because there are large groups.
You have to be outside of Davidson County to be able to do that. And you can't come here. You can't come to Williamson County pretty much. So there's probably maybe 4 counties, Wilson, Sumner, Rutherford, Cheatham,
Robertson, Williamson,
that kind of touch that area without having to go too far away.
Exactly.
So I think an hour is probably too far.
I would agree. I would say 30 minutes is a sweet spot. And it also depends on the drive. I know you and I have looked at properties that was like, oh, it's only 30 minutes, but like it was hell to get there.
Yeah. So we went down to Shelbyville or something to look at that Apple Ranch farm and everything. And it was literally freeway and back roads, and it was an hour and 5 minutes. So you're driving on the freeway the whole way. Going to the Hendersonville property, I've gone there 2 ways now. One, I went all the way up, 24, 65 or whatever that is, and then just cut the last couple miles over, and it seemed like it was twice as long, as opposed to getting off at Long Hollow Pike and driving through town. The feel is different there.
Yeah.
The other thing that you have to look at is you need to understand what's showing up in the Nashville DMA on Airbnb and Vrbo, right? So Hendersonville's included.
Yep.
If I go down to Shelbyville, that's not included. That means I have to do a whole different level of marketing.
Yep.
And that was the thing when my Inner Circle member Chuck bought the lodge in Lebanon from his father-in-law. It was inside the DMA. And then this was probably 22 or 23. They adjusted it to where it stops at the edge of Mount Juliet. So Lebanon's not included now.
Yeah.
Makes it way harder from a listing optimization standpoint.
Totally too. And that's a big thing too, is like I'm like a missed opportunity, because with us being maxed to 12 people, when someone comes in with a group of 20, they don't know that. So either it's going to be a 2 unit, like a sister unit in Davidson County that rents 12 each. So they're getting that 20 mark, or they're getting these bigger homes outside of
How
the
many
city.
of those are there? I don't see that many.
A good amount. My clients have one. I would say the statistic is anywhere between like 8 and 14%, maybe 15% increase if they're managed well. But that's the big thing too, is these property management companies are just trying to absorb everyone because Nashville isn't a hot market for self-homes.
But I mean, how many 4 bedrooms that are directly side by side that are combined that are being rented on Airbnb? I'm not an exact number. I would guess there's less than 200.
Yeah, I would agree. There's less
Might
than
be less than
200.
100.
I would say there's closer to like 50.
Yeah.
Maybe 75.
So that presents an opportunity for somebody that can get 2 side by side.
Exactly. And then the big thing too is like having the themes being consistent, and that interior design is the level of like what you would want at a massive super property. Because if you want to rent them out, you're not just getting 2, you're getting 3 listings. You've got them separately and then together.
The parent is like the 8 bedrooms, and then the 2 individual child listings is 4 each.
Yep. And that's an opportunity. You have to have the funds to do that. And that's the big stickler. And unless it's new construction, there's oftentimes, unless it's the same seller, you're not going to find 2 units side by side.
Correct.
And that's then another just bump in the road that we've got to work through.
You can get away with that with maybe 1 or 2 units in between. But I think if you're 10 units apart, it's too far.
It's challenging.
Yeah. I mean, because people, rain, snow, whatever, they're not going to want to walk that back and forth. But I do see that as an opportunity inside of Davidson County. If you find 2 of those side by side, let me know.
Okay. Well, there's a community coming downtown called the Heritage. It's a new construction, won't be delivered till 2027. They started doing that. So with the condos, they now have conjunction, like the rooms conjoining. So you can rent them out separately and together if you purchase them, or if they're managed by the same company, they can have that same management feature.
Nice.
There's a couple other communities here in Nashville, the Avery over off Gallatin Pike being one of them as well. So that's something that people are trying to do, but also they just need to have the funds and capital. And a lot of times they don't.
Yeah, because you're talking about $1 million each, roughly,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
So $2 million purchase.
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. Kirklyn, thanks for joining me
Thanks
on
for having me.
the
I appreciate it.
podcast. How can everybody get a hold of you?
I would say, social media is my big thing, just at Kirklyn Powell for Instagram or Facebook. And it's KIRKLYN, not LAND, like Costco. But really just reaching out direct, like give me a call, shoot me a text. My cell is 870-654-0747.
Kirklyn knows his shit, folks. I really appreciate the update on the Nashville market. Hopefully we can write an offer here in the next 24 hours.
Would love that. I appreciate you having me on. Thanks,
Awesome.
Bill.
Thank you guys for joining us. If you had any value today, make sure you smash that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Bill Faith Unfiltered.